Hello, this is Reverend Dr. Caroline Wilkins and Right Reverend Ward Walton from Bereavement Rescue, and we're very lucky today to have Sharon Milliman here to tell us about her near-death experience. Would you mind giving us a brief overview about your near-death experience, please, Sharon?
Okay, I thank you for having me. And I've had 4 near-death experiences, but the one that I'm going to talk about is my second one, and it was the most significant one of all of the ones I've had. I was sitting outside on the concrete steps in my backyard, and I had heard it started to rain. I was talking on a cordless phone, and um, I heard this rumbling in the distance, and then I heard a loud crack, and the lightning had come out of the sky and hit my right arm. And once it went through me, it went underneath the house and blew the transformer that was in front of our house. And our neighborhood was without power for about 4 hours. And there were char marks on the concrete steps where I was sitting. After the lightning hit me, I felt a searing, horrific pain in my right arm and through my chest. And that only lasted for just like a minute. And then my spirit just peeled up out of my body like peeling a banana. And I got up. I guess I started walking or floating or whatever through my house. And I was in my house, and I knew it was my house, but there was nothing in it that was mine. And I was confused for a little while about all of this. I went into the kitchen and I noticed the curtains, and the curtains were not my curtains. And then I walked into the dining room and I noticed the furniture wasn't my furniture. And I heard this old-time radio show playing somewhere. Now, we had no power, so I couldn't figure out where that radio sound was coming from. It sounded like something from back in the 20s or 30s. And I felt frightened and lost for a little while. And then I couldn't find my husband. I knew my husband at the time had just come home from work, and he was in the house. My children were in the house. But yet as I walked through each of the rooms, they were not there. And all I could hear was that radio sound. And just as I began to panic, this huge loving presence was there with me. And this presence and I knew this presence was God. And all I could feel was this huge love just totally and completely fill me. And I felt such peace, and this huge loving, this presence was bigger than the house, was huge. And this presence took me from my house through these we went sideways. We didn't go up or down. We went sideways, laterally. And we went through these beautiful pink and gold clouds. And at the end of the clouds, there was this beautiful garden. And there were 2 young men that came forward and greeted me. And they were wearing an ivory linen, tightly woven linen cloth, some kind of shirt and lounge pants. And they showed me the weave pattern of the clothing they were wearing. And for some reason, that was very, very important. And I found out later why that was important. But these 2 young men, at first I thought they were angels, but then it just hit me like divine knowledge. Oh my gosh, all of a sudden it was like I knew who they were, and they were my 2 brothers who had died as babies. And they were fully grown men, between, I don't know, late 20s, early 30s. And when they smiled, they looked just like my dad. And the reunion was so amazing. There was so much love, and they were so handsome, and I couldn't get over it. I kept saying, oh my gosh, Dad would be so proud of you. And so then after that, we walked a little bit further into the garden, and this garden was magnificent. The colors were so vibrant. there were colors I didn't even have words for. The flowers, pinks were pinker, reds were redder. Everything was so beautiful, and the air was so sweet and crisp and clean, and you know, there were birds and animals, and I saw landscapes and you know, houses and buildings, and just there was a stream and it just kind of glistened like diamonds. And um, as we walked a little bit further into the garden, and I also heard music. There was music, and I realized that everything had a vibrational sound, like the grass had a vibration, and the flowers had a different vibration. Each color had different sound. The birds had a sound. The trees had a vibration. And when you put all of those vibrations together, there was this magnificent orchestra. And it was like everything was singing praises to God. And it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. I mean, there's no orchestra or choir on this planet that can compare to what I heard. And then, so we walked a little bit further into the garden, and my two brothers were with me. And this huge loving presence moved from beside me to behind me and was still pouring this love, you know, just totally filled me. And then there was this like old-fashioned, you know, black and white movie they were showing me. It was like on an old-fashioned movie reel, and there was a bunch of other people that gathered around, and I knew them, but I didn't know from where I knew them, and they knew me. And they were from all different time periods. I mean, some of the women were wearing gowns, and some of the men were wearing fancy suits, and then there were some people that were in normal clothes like what we would wear. And they were just all gathered around for love and support. And as I'm watching this movie, it's a black and white movie, and it's everything from the time I was born until the time I died. But there was no judgment. I mean, it was like over so quick, like a blink of an eye. I did not judge myself, and God did not judge me, and none of the people that were around me judged me at all. And it was, all I felt was love. And that's when I knew that standing with God, and you watch your life review, He does not judge you. We are the ones who judge ourselves. And if you don't judge yourself, there is no judgment, period. I mean, you watch it, for me, it was like information purposes only. And so then we moved a little bit further into the garden. After that, I heard a male voice say, "What you put out into the universe will come back to you." And I knew that voice was God, but I had never heard those words before, so I didn't know what that meant. But then I was shown what that meant. And if you put out love, love comes back to you. If you put out hate and cheating and stealing, all of that's going to come back to you. You don't know when or how, but it will. So I learned that. And then we moved further into the garden, and I could see all these beautiful buildings, like on the outskirts of what I call the glorious city. And I could see the middle of the city, there was a huge building that had a golden dome. And there were houses and buildings for healing, trauma, you know. And there was a place where there were children who had died as babies, and they were being supported and loved by angels and loved ones. And so I could see all of these things. And Jesus came out of a grove of trees and walked up to me, and he started telling me how much he loved me and not to be afraid, that he would always be with me. And that was my first clue that I was coming back, but it kind of went over my head. And when I'm standing there with Jesus, he is so beautiful that I had eyes only for him, and I have no idea where my brothers went. They disappeared. And so he took me, we started walking, and he was talking and telling me how much he loved me and all of this. And as we walked, he took me over to a wooded glen, and there was a log, and this wooded glen was so beautiful. You could see the light coming through the trees, and there were little blue flowers and pine cones and stuff sitting on the ground. And there was a log, and I sat down on the log, and on the opposite end of the log there was another man, and I knew that man to be God. And he started talking to me, And he said, what would you do if it was just me and you? And I couldn't understand what I was like, what? What are you talking about? I don't understand. What does that mean? And so he asked me again, and I still couldn't answer the question. I just totally, it went right over my head. And so he said, well, come with me. And so we walked a little bit further into the garden, and there was a clearing, and he kind of waved his hand. And when he did, he opened up the sky, kind of like a zipper on a jacket or something. And they just unzipped the sky, and I could see the vastness of the universe with nothing in it. There was just spinning planets, sparkling stars, and rainbow colored gases. And it was just huge. I mean, it was just huge. And there was no trees, no people, no houses, nothing like that. And I looked at him and I said, no, I don't think so. That's just too big, too much for me. And, if it was just me and you would get tired of me after the first 10 minutes because I would talk your ear off and chatter, and you would get sick of that. And so he laughed, and he's got a magnificent laugh. He really does. And so we walked back to the log and sat back down, and he asked me again, what would you do if it was just me and you? No parents, no children, no husband, no friends, nobody, just me and you. And I didn't know how to answer that question because I'd never thought about that before. And so I was looking at this magnificent tree that was in front of me. And I don't know why I said this, because I've never read the Quran. I don't know anything about Islam. I know nothing. But I said, God, your 100th name in the book of the Quran is God is everywhere, God is nowhere, and God is in me. He said, yes, that's right. Well, I found out later that in the Quran there are only 99 names for God, but the 100th name of God is so holy that it's never spoken. And only the holy people, I guess the holy men or medicine men or whatever you call them, they are the only ones that know that name, and they never say it because it's too holy. But I said it to him, and he said, that's right. And then after that, I was looking at this tree, and I could see the bark and the leaves and how everything, the roots in the ground, and how they take the nutrients, and how the nutrients go into the air, and we breathe the air. So everything is connected to everything else, and everything is so intricately important to all of creation. And we are so important, even though we're so tiny in the grand scheme of everything, of all that is, and the vastness of the universe, we are so intricately important to all of creation. And that was a huge. And then after I looked at the tree, I said, God, you made this tree. You are in this tree. So when I see this tree, I see you. He said, yes, that's right. And so I started thinking about my parents, and I said, God, you're in my parents. So when I see my parents, I see you. And he said, yes, that's right. And so I started thinking about my children, and I said the same thing. And then I started thinking about, a certain person who had been very cruel to me and had hurt me. And I said, God, you made this person. You are in this person. So when I see this person, I see you. He said, yes, that's right. He said, now I have a question for you. He said, when you look in the mirror, what do you see? And I kind of looked down, and I thought, not much, just me, and that's not a whole lot. But that's not something you say to God, And so I looked at him and I said, when I look in the mirror, I see you made me. You are in me. So when I look in the mirror, I see you. And he said, yes, that's right. And he was so happy. His eyes sparkled. He grinned from ear to ear. He was so happy because I got it. That was the right answer. But then after that, there were two angels, and they were dressed in these beautiful gowns. And they took me to this lake and showed me. I looked down in this lake, and it was like looking in glass, and I could see the earth below, and I could see like future world events. And it was very hard to watch some of that stuff. But what they were letting me know is that these things do not have to happen, but they will if you all don't change the way you're doing things. You know, God has a certain order of doing things, and if we step out of his order of doing things, this is what will happen. So after that, I don't remember having a discussion with God about whether I should come back or not, because if I did have that discussion, I probably wasn't very nice, because I didn't want to come back. But I ended up back, and I was diagnosed with a right bundle branch block in my heart from being struck by the lightning. And so that's what happened.
Wow, goodness. I've got plenty of things to ask you. First of all, the weave pattern. You said that the weave pattern was significant in your brother's robes.
Yes. What happened was, it wasn't long ago. My husband that I'm married to now, he was in the kitchen baking, and I came into the kitchen, and he had a show on the TV, and it was about the Shroud of Turin, and they were going into great detail about what had happened to Jesus and all of this kind of stuff. And when I walked into the room, they actually had a piece of the shroud where they had taken a picture of it, a close-up picture of it, and they put it on the screen so that you could see that the weave pattern was a herringbone weave. And that is exactly what my brothers did. They showed me this weave, this intricate weave pattern that was on their clothing, and it was exactly the same herringbone weave. And when I saw that on the screen of the TV, I fell to the floor. I started crying. I was like, oh my gosh. And my husband was asking me, what is wrong? Are you okay? What is wrong? And I said, look at that. That is the actual cloth of Jesus. That Shroud of Turin is authentic. That is Jesus' burial cloth. And my brothers were showing me this. I never could figure it out until I saw that show. And I have found that over the years, I get confirmation in many different ways about the things that I was shown and told. And sometimes it absolutely blows me away, but they were showing me this weave pattern for a reason. And then I see this on the TV with these scientists who show this weave pattern of the cloth. And I knew instantly at that time, they were telling me that this was the actual cloth of Jesus. So that was so important, so important.
That's incredible. Rod's very interested in the Turin Shroud, aren't you, Rod?
Yes. You know I am, Kesha. So basically, near-death experiences are another dovetailing into the shroud. You've got the scientific evidence, and now we've got the near-death. Everything is pointing, but the interesting part is, up until modern times, we didn't have all the evidence from science and near-death experiences, but this time in history, it's all coming together.
Yes, it is. It's amazing. I was just so stunned when I saw that, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's what they were telling me. That's what was the importance of showing me that weave pattern. And the clothing that they were wearing was actually, it was like an expensive linen. That's the only thing I could say, because I don't know that much about material, but I knew this was an expensive linen that they were wearing. While the cloth that Jesus was buried in, from what I understand, was an expensive linen.
Yes, exactly. It came from Joseph of Arimathea. He actually gave the shroud, so that would dovetail again perfectly.
When we were speaking yesterday, you were telling us about the way in which the image was created on the Shroud of Turin, and relating it to the point of conception. I wonder if that there's some sort of connection there with the fact that when you were out of your body talking to your brothers, you saw that weave pattern. Do you think there's anything in that?
Well, what I learned was that when, at the moment of conception, when the egg and the sperm meet, there is a brilliant light. It just that is the moment that the soul enters the body. That is the moment that God breathes his life, himself, into the soul. So the same thing happened with Jesus. After he died, his soul left his body. They wrapped him in this cloth. He lays in the tomb, and on Sunday, or the 2 days later, 3 days later, God he breathes his soul back into him, and there's a brilliant light. And that brilliant light is what made the image on the shroud. It was not painted on, it was not drawn on, it was caused by this brilliant light that infused his image onto that cloth. And it was when his soul entered his body again after death at the resurrection. It's the same thing as when a baby is conceived. There's that brilliant light that God puts his soul, that breathes his life into that soul, and there's that brilliant light. So it's the same thing.
Yeah, that's remarkable. You mentioned being shown future events. Can you tell us what you saw, please?
Sure. I saw events that stemmed from or were as a result of the 9/11 attacks. I saw terrorist attacks on our country and other countries. I saw a lot of things that I did not put in my book because it's kind of scary, but some of it has actually happened. I saw the beheadings. I saw the women and children being used as human shields, and I saw bombs going off. I saw a lot of land changes, like tsunamis. There were 6 huge waves that hit the land, the coast. And I saw, they showed me several specific things. They showed me a man in dark clothing, and there was a riot going on in some street, and he picked up something heavy and threw it through a plate glass window. And I heard 3 gunshots, and I saw this man laying dead in the street, and there were policemen everywhere. And there was a building across the street from where this was happening. I think it was like a CVS or a Rite Aid or some kind of, drugstore, and it was on fire. And I had no idea what that was all about until my husband actually had to tell me what I saw, because I didn't know what I saw. And I think he said it was the Ferguson situation. When I described it, he said that's what that was. I saw a woman, they showed me this woman in a white car. I guess she was from Canada, I think. And anyway, her car was swept off the street by these floodwaters, and she had a young boy in the car with her. And the young boy drowned. But then there was all these people that came, and they pulled him out, and they resuscitated him. He came back to life. And this woman went to do some kind of video series or something, spiritual something. They showed that to me. They showed me the United States being split apart. It looked like a silver ribbon. And what I understood that to be was the Mississippi River, and the Mississippi River swells and the Great Lakes swell. And what happens is it splits the United States in half. They showed me corruption of governments and governments falling apart. They showed me this by this gray cloud that hangs over the Capitol buildings of where these governments are. And they said they were very corrupt, and They also showed me, oh my goodness, they showed me something that looked like martial law. There were men in SWAT gear standing on street corners holding guns, and it was like mayhem and craziness. I'm not sure exactly where that was at. I think it was in the United States, but I don't know. But these things that they showed me, again, they were telling me that these things do not have to happen. But if we don't change our collective selfishness and taking more than what we need, and we need to start treating people with love and not the negative. These things can change, but a lot of them have already happened, and when they happen, it just blows my mind. Because they showed it to me and it was like, oh my gosh.
It must be quite frightening. Sorry. It must be quite frightening seeing these things unfolding and knowing that it can be changed, but if humans will change their behaviour, but realistically, that doesn't seem to be happening, does it? So you must be worrying about where this is going to end up.
Well, yeah, I do. I just have to pray about it because it's bigger than me. And I think that that's what really we all need to do, is we need to come together and we need to pray, and we need to stop fighting about our differences and about different religions and about different doctrines and about who's right and who's wrong, because that's not what it's about. It's about a relationship with God. It has nothing to do with religion, and people fight about that, and there are holy wars fought. There's one going on now over in Iran. I mean, come on, give me a break. It's not about that. It's about there's one God. We should love God and love our neighbors, and it would be simple. But people don't make it that way.
Interesting what you said about governments falling apart. That's actually happening in the UK as we speak, isn't it?
Well, I have heard from other people that live there that yes, that is happening. It's going to happen here, and people.
Yes.
They showed me also that they showed me golden coins being used to purchase things, and that's already happened. People making their investments from stocks and bonds to golden coins. So that's already happened. Just in the last several years, I guess. They showed me after that people going back to the barter system because our financial institutions just crumble. I mean, there's just nothing. They told me the dollar is not worth the paper it's written on. That's what they said to me. I was like, wow. And they were holding a dollar. And they showed me the golden coins. They dropped the golden coins in their hand and showed me that. And they said that people put their trust in the financial the financial institutions, and that's not where they need to put it.
Yeah, that's very interesting. If I may, we'll move on to another topic. I'm interested in what you said about your life review and how you had no self-judgment, and that you only have really experienced as much judgment as you apply to yourself. Now, what I'm wondering about is sometimes there are people who do a lot of bad things and they don't feel guilty about them. They don't have self-judgment. So where's the justice in that?
Well, what I understood during my life review, and what I was given to understand, because when I was there, I had this like IV bottle of divine knowledge. It just infused me, and it was like all of a sudden I got all the answers to all the questions of humankind, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is so
wow.
cool.
That must be amazing.
It was. I kept telling God, oh my gosh, you are so simple. We human beings make you complicated, and you're not complicated at all. You're so simple. And I kept saying, you are so awesome, God, you are so awesome. And it was like one revelation after another, aha moment. It was amazing. But what I learned about your question is that yeah, these people, it's like a ripple effect, okay? So people can do horrible things and they hurt other people, but what that is they have God gives us free will and he's a gentleman. So he's not going to step in and say, oh, you bad child, look what you just did. I need to fix this for you. Because if he does that, we don't learn. So these bad things that happen, these people that do these horrific things, they do it out of selfishness, and the opposite of love is not hate, it's selfishness, and hatred is born out of selfishness. And they showed me that these people who do these horrible things, they have overstepped their boundaries and inflicted their free will onto someone else, thereby taking away that other person's free will. And so when they have their life review, in the physical body, we may have people who are psychopaths or sociopaths or people who have absolutely no remorse for what they do. But when you go to heaven and you're in the spiritual world, you see and you feel everything. Your senses are so heightened. You're so aware of everything. And when you have your life review, you see the good things and the bad things, or what we term as good and bad. And what I learned is it's the little tiny things. It's not the great, big, huge things. It's the little things that matter. Sharing your toys when you were a child, touching a shoulder of someone who's hurting, listening to a friend, visiting someone in the hospital. These are all little things. And each little thing that you do, if you do it with love, that's huge. That's huge, and that's what you see. Now, these people who do these horrific things and they have their life review, they are no longer in the physical, so they don't have this filters of diagnoses of mental illness or whatever. And so they're able to see and feel what they did to someone else. And if they went out and killed someone, they would actually see that and feel that from the other person's perspective. How did that feel to that person, what you did to them? And they will actually feel it. And that's the kind of judgment. It's not, God sitting there with a black book marking check marks. So you did bad. Okay, black mark. You did this. Black mark. Sorry. That's not how it works. We learn through watching our life review. We learn what it is we did that was wrong and how it felt. And it's like a big lesson or whatever. We learn through feeling what we did to someone else. Now, in my life review, I had no clue. I was just going along with the flow. I had no idea even what a near-death experience was. I didn't know what a life review was. I didn't know anything. So I was just like in the wow factor. I was just going along with everything. And you could have knocked me over with a feather because I was just like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. So I didn't know when I was looking at my life review that I needed to judge myself or to see that I had done something wrong. I honestly didn't see anything. I looked at my brothers and I said, is that it? Something's missing. And they were grinning. And I was like, really? You're going to pull the brother card on me now? Tell me what is missing? What's going on here? I don't understand. But what I got out of it was that, regardless of what we do, God's going to love us. And I felt his love so completely. And I didn't feel judgment from anybody else. But I got to the understanding that we have lessons in life, right? And these lessons are going to continue. And they're going to keep coming and coming and coming until we get it. They're going to come in different ways. The situation may change, but we're still going to be given lessons to learn in order to grow spiritually. And that's what it's all about, growing spiritually. So these people that do bad things, they will see and feel what they have done to hurt other people. And that's where the justice is.
That's perfect justice, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
And God said, justice is mine, says the Lord. We're
Exactly.
not supposed to, because if we do something to hurt someone else because they hurt us, we're going to feel that in our life review. And I certainly don't want to do that. So I'm very careful about what I say and what I do, because I want things to come from a point of love. And, you know, I'm human. I do get angry. I do get frustrated, but I apologize afterwards immediately. And I was like trying to walk as holy life as possible, because I don't want a bad life review.
Do you know that was my next question, was how has the near-death experience affected you? You know, the way in which you live your life, and are you more conscious of having to get everything right and having to do good things?
Yes, I try very hard. And I know that maybe we don't really have to try that hard if we just listen to what Jesus said. Love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. Those are pretty simple. I mean, that's pretty simple. And if we can do that, we shouldn't have a bad life review. We shouldn't need to worry about it.
I'm very interested in the subject of empathy and psychopathy. They're, the opposite of empathy. And I suppose listening to you, what I'm taking from this is we should each be concerned about our own life review and our own life performance, and not think too much about what happens to others and what happens to psychopaths in particular. But I think that humans tend to have what I call a circle of empathy. And within that circle, they allow themselves to feel empathy. And for some people, that circle will be their family, or their friends, or it might be their church environment, or their school, or their workplace. But I think everybody has a circle, and within that, they will feel empathy.
Right.
And for me, I particularly love animals, so my circle of empathy includes every animal on the planet. So I feel very upset if any animal gets hurt. But
the good news is that animals go to heaven. I saw animals.
Oh, okay. Now you need to tell me more about that.
Yes, they do go to heaven. Our beloved pets go to heaven. I had a third NDE, and in my third NDE, I went right back to the same place I was before, only I was standing next to the golden wall that surrounded the city. And there was this little puppy, this little brown and white beagle puppy. Now, mind you, I looked on him, I could see I still had a body. I felt wonderful. I was a better version of me, and the flowers and the trees, and I saw every single thing that I'd seen in the second NDE, I saw in this third one. But there was this little brown and white beagle puppy, and he was so cute, and he had a fat, roly-poly tummy, and he was jumping at my feet and wiggling his tail all over, and he was barking, and he wanted me to play with him. So I bent down, and I was playing with him and rubbing his tummy, and I said, "Oh my gosh, you're a little boy. I'll rub your tummy, but don't pee on me." I actually said this. So I'm playing with this little puppy, and at the same time, there are these people, tons of people pouring out of the garden, and they were of all walks of life, all colors, all traditions, all ages, all stages of life. It wasn't like they were just Christians. It wasn't like they were just Muslims. It wasn't that they were just whatever. It was all of them. I mean, I saw two men, Middle Eastern men, and they had the robes on and the things on their head. I saw a man come out, and he looked like he was maybe from New York or something. He was a construction worker. He still had a helmet on his head, and he had tools in his vest. I saw children and women, and everybody had their own specific angel, and the angel was taller and more illuminated than the people were. And they were wearing these blue and white robes, and everybody was talking and laughing, and their angels were with them. And as they were walking through from the garden, they were pouring out of the garden and walking through this meadow of tall grass and wildflowers, and then going into the city. And it sounded to me like there was a party or something going on. I heard dishes clanging and music playing and people talking, and I thought, I kept trying to jump that wall, but that wall was so tall and so solid. It was golden. And I kept thinking, how in the world can I get through that wall? Well, it didn't dawn on me just to walk a couple feet down the road, and there was the gates open wide, and people were just pouring inside. And so there were two men that approached me, and I recognized the younger of the two from pictures that I had seen from a friend of mine. It was her son, and he had died years ago. And he was walking from the garden through the meadow and up to me, and he had an older gentleman with him. And I looked at him and I said, "Oh my gosh, I know you." And he just smiled at me, and he took this man with him, which I knew to be his father. And they walked into the gates. Well, after this near-death experience, when I came back to my body, I was still hooked up to machines and everything. I had had an emergency surgery, and that's what caused it. They pulled the breathing tube out, and when they did, I aspirated, and that's when it happened. But when I got back to my body, and I was in recovery for a while, and then I got back to my room, I picked up my phone, and I looked that a friend of mine, who was a joint friend of this other lady, she had texted me and told me that this woman's husband died that day while I was in surgery. And I told her, I said, "Oh my gosh, I know, because I saw him, and he was with her son, and they went into the city together. They're together." And so it was absolutely amazing. And I was able to tell her, and it helped her in her grieving. But the puppy, I had no idea what that puppy was all about. He was so cute. So I was telling my daughter about what happened, and I told her about the little puppy, and she said, "Oh my gosh, Mom, we had a neighbor that lived down the street from us that we had to call the police on because he had beaten his beagle puppy to death. And the man got arrested for doing that." And I told her, I said, "Well, that's the puppy. The puppy was there, and he was whole and healthy and roly-poly and happy, and just, so our beloved pets go to heaven. They are there. And I saw birds, and I saw other animals, and I saw rolling plains where cows and chickens and horses and wherever, whatever, they're all there, they have purpose and meaning, and God's Spirit is in them too. And so...
Did any of them speak to you? I know some near-death experience people have reported animals speaking to them in heaven.
I didn't hear it. I heard birds going crazy. They were singing like crazy. I mean, to the top of their lungs, singing. And I love birds. I had people tease me and call me St. Francis. Spelled with the female Francis, not the male Francis. But they tease me because I will pick up birds, I will hold them, I will nurse them back to health, and if they die, I bury them in my rose garden. I've had a couple stories in my book, one about the little wren and one about the little dove. And I've had hawks fly over my house and will literally talk to me, and I will talk back, just like I'm talking to you. And then they will make their call. We have a hawk that lives right around my house, and he flies over my house almost daily. And I was talking to somebody online one day, and he actually heard the hawk, and I was telling, "Hi baby, how are you? You're so beautiful. Spread those wings for me." And he'll start calling and talking back to me. We'll just carry on a conversation.
Oh, that's lovely. And I know it's of great relief to animal lovers when they hear that animals go to heaven too.
Yes.
It's almost people are almost afraid to ask as if it's a childish question, but if you're an animal lover, it's a really important question, because animal lovers love their animals just as much as human lovers love their humans.
It's true. It's really true. I've got 3 cats. I have 2 cats and 1 kitten. And I love them as if they were my own kid. I call them baby. Come here, baby. Come here. People look at me like I'm crazy, but I love them as if they were my own children. And when they die, you mourn them. You really do.
Yeah.
But they're in heaven. And, my mother died. And after she died, her dog died. And they both appeared to me. And I saw them physically. When her dog died, she was standing in the garden. She looked like she was 25 years old. And she was absolutely breathtaking. And I had just dropped my dad off as we had taken her dog to the vet because she had cancer and it was time. And I didn't want my dad to be there to see that. So I took him home, and then I went to my house to get the mail, and I was going to go back and sit with my dad. Well, while I was there, my mom I saw her physically standing in the flower garden, and she had on a black shirt and these khaki capris and these little black ballet slipper type shoes. And she was she looked like she did when she was 25. She was breathtaking. Well, I heard this dog barking, and I looked to the side, and there's Isabel running across the yard. She jumped in my mom's arms and was licking her face, and my mom was laughing, and then they disappeared. And I knew at that point that was when they had put Isabel to sleep. And Isabel was young again and strong and running at breakneck speed. And she just jumped in my mom's arms. And so I knew that they were together again and that everything was okay. It was an amazing. I was able to go home to my dad and tell my dad, look, Isabel is with Mom. Mom is okay. Isabel is okay. You don't have to be sad. It's okay. They're together and they're happy.
What a lovely message, and for all our listeners and everyone we try and help with bereavement rescue, our focus is to try and tell people that they will be reunited with their loved ones, and it certainly helps them to hear from witnesses like yourself that is the case. Can I ask you, what are your thoughts on prayer? A lot of people ask, why do we need to pray? Surely God sees all and knows our needs. My thought personally is that you have to communicate in order to have a relationship. So maybe That's the focus of it. But I'd like to know what your thoughts on prayer are, please.
It's exactly what you said. You can know God, or to know about God is very different than knowing God. To know Jesus or to know of Jesus is very different than actually knowing Jesus. And the only way that you can know them is through communication, through a relationship. And you can't have a relationship with someone you don't talk to. So that's what prayer is. It's just a form of communication, and you can do it reading the prayers in the back of a book, or you can just sit down and talk to God like I'm talking to you. I mean, that's how you get to, and also if we sit quietly and listen, we will hear him speak. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an audible voice, but he can speak to us through. I posted something on my Facebook page today about that. He can speak to us through birds and butterflies and trees and flowers and rainbows and anything. He can speak to us through words in the Bible. He can speak to us through words through someone else. So it's all about communication. It's all about building a very personal relationship. And everybody's relationship with God is different because we're all different people. And he comes and meets us where we are. And so prayer is important, or you can call it having a talk or whatever. There was a time when I went to a priest because I was really confused about, after my near-death experience, and my life just kind of fell apart. It was like, why am I even here? What is the purpose of all this? And so I went to a priest friend of mine and I asked him, and he said, why don't you tell God all the things you're telling me? And I said, probably out of respect because I'm pretty angry right now. And he said, well, He said, God is really big. He said, you know that because you saw him. He's huge. He's got big shoulders. He can take it. So why don't you tell him everything you just told me? Well, I went home and I spent about 2 hours on the back porch.
And another thing.
Yeah, I got something to say to you. And I want you to listen. And he actually listened. And I told him, I said, I want you to show me. Show me that you heard me. Show me that my life has meaning. Make it very clear. Because this is everything that's happening here is just crazy and I don't understand it. So you show me. Well, there was a tree. Now, I have this thing for birds and bird nests and bird eggs, and he knows that. Not a lot of people do know that about me, but he knew that. And there was this tree right down the steps from my parents' back porch where I was sitting. And it had nothing in it. It had leaves, but it didn't have anything in it. It was just a tree. The next morning, after I had said that prayer, or I had that talk with God, there was a bird nest in the tree with eggs in it, and a bird sitting on the eggs, and the male bird was sitting on a different limb, overwatching this mother bird. And I saw that, and it was so visible. It was like right in front of my face. I couldn't have not seen it. And I started jumping around like a little girl at Christmas time, hugging my husband, hugging my dad, hugging everybody. Look what God did. Look what God did. Do you see that? It takes more than one night for a bird to build a nest, lay its eggs, and sit on them. It takes a few weeks for that to happen. But this happened overnight, and it was a very clear sign that I had asked for that God showed me. So he does listen, and he does answer, although he may not always answer the way we want him to, but he does answer.
Is there anything you wish that you'd asked Jesus or God when you were actually there in heaven?
I wished I was able to speak and ask so many things. But what happens when I get around, my mouth goes dry. And I said, it happens every time.
But you don't have a mouth in heaven.
Well, the thing of it is that I had a body. I had hands and eyes and hair. I looked down the front of me. I could see my clothes. I could see my feet. And I could smell and I could taste. And so...
Did you look the same as you do now?
Yes, but a much better version. And my body felt light, not weighted down with gravity like here on Earth. And I didn't have the extra weight. And I was young, and I was illuminated.
You still had a dry mouth though, and you couldn't ask Jesus.
I did. I couldn't speak. And I think they made it that way so I would shut my mouth and listen to what they had to say, because they had to kill me to bring me up there to say, hey, listen, we've been talking to you and you're not listening, so shut your mouth and I've got something to say to you.
Do you think you were sent back with any particular message?
God is real. Heaven is real. Jesus is real. And it's not about religion. It's about relationship. And we're here to love, to learn how to love and be loved. And that's agape love, the unconditional love with no strings. And it's the little things that we do that are important. Those are huge to God. And that whatever we do with love. And it doesn't matter. I'm sorry.
At the risk of going back to dogs again, I can't help but feel that dogs are placed here to teach us how to love unconditionally.
Exactly.
They're so
not
good
just
at that.
Dogs, but cats and other animals. They do love unconditionally, and they trust. You could, if you've ever looked in the eyes of a horse, oh my goodness, you see a soul. I see a soul in all of the animals, but I've walked up to horses before and they've actually laid their head on my shoulder, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, this huge animal just came over and just laid his head on my shoulder. They're so, there is nothing but unconditional love that comes from them. And they're so trusting and so innocent. The innocence in them is just beyond. I see their beauty. It's like I see their soul. It's not just a dog. It's a soul. And that soul is so deep.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got 3 horses and a dog, and
oh, do you?
I do, yes. And I'm certainly very aware of their souls and their individuality, and they are as vibrant as individuals as any human.
They are. They certainly are.
And they're lots easier to love. I know. we often joke that because my dog Sasha, she hates it when I go out, and she'll wait by the back door. And we've got a theory that if she goes to heaven before I do, she'll be waiting at the gate. And
she certainly will. She certainly will. My dog Molly, I had a little blonde cocker spaniel, and she died from pancreatic cancer. And I had her for so many years, and when she died, it was so traumatic, and I cried for months. And I buried her in my garden, my rose garden, and I saw my grandmother, and my grandmother had my dog. And my grandmother was so not an animal person. She was this Southern lady that was so prim and proper. She should have been in a hoop skirt with mint julep, on a veranda or something. But here she was holding my dog. So I know that this happens. They go to heaven, and then they'll be there when we get there. So
I noticed you mentioned roses quite a bit. Has your NDE changed you as a person, changed the things that you love and are attracted to and interested in? And how has it changed your life as well?
I see God in everything, in nature, in the roses, in each rose petal. I love horses and animals and birds especially. I love birds. They'll come and they'll sit. When I'm sitting on the porch, they'll sit in the tree right next to me, and they'll sing and sing and sing, and it just sounds just like it did when I was in heaven. What I do now is I will walk in the grass barefoot so I can just feel everything, and I look for feathers and heart-shaped rocks, and just all of these things are like gifts from God. And every day I look for a little gift from God, and He gives them to me. And it's like, you know what? You're there. I love you. I'm here with you. So here you go. And there'll be a beautiful white feather, or there'll be a pink rose, or a bird will fly over and a feather will fall, or, there have been times when He's actually put a rainbow in front of my house. And it was like,
Goodness. Just
when I thought all hope was gone, I look out the door, and lo and behold, there's a huge rainbow right in front of my house. So I'm thinking, oh my God, His wonderful gifts. I see Him in everything, and everyone. And that's what really changed me.
Has it changed your view of the Bible? Or subtopics like Jesus' crucifixion? Has that changed at all as a result of the NDE?
I believe the Bible. I believe the words in the Bible. And I know that Jesus was crucified and died. I mean, that's a historical, documented thing.
Yeah, of course.
But there was a huge spiritual component that took place from that. I mean, He died so that our faith in Him would allow us to have a deeper relationship with God. I mean, He also, through His death, there is no death. I mean, He showed us there is no death. He took care of that. We don't die. We go on after death, and because of Him, because of what He did. And I believe that Jesus is the human face of God.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
He I don't know. He's so beautiful.
How do you feel when Easter comes around every year? because I mean personally as a Christian, I find Easter very difficult. I know most Christians find this very uplifting, but for me, the thought of somebody I love being tortured and killed is absolutely awful. And it must be so much worse for you because you've actually met him.
I'm exactly like you, and yes, I cry. On Good Friday, it is the hardest day. It's like it drags on forever, and I'm looking at the clock. Okay, this is what's happening now. This is what's happening now. Oh my God, he's dead! No, and then I look forward to Easter because I know he's going to come back. But I go through the trauma. I mean, it hurts me. I've done this ever since I was a child. Before I even, before he even appeared to me the first time at the age of 15 in the back of the church. This was before that. I would go through this, I don't know how to explain it. It hurts so bad. I would cry. I would sit there and I would watch the movies, and I would, Jesus, I'm going to go through this with you. You're not going to be alone. I love you. And I want to go through this with you. And I would go through it. And it would hurt so bad. And then I would go on Holy Thursday. We have communion, and it's in a monstrance or whatever, and it's sitting out so that we can actually sit with Jesus for however long we want to. At Holy Thursday, after the Last Supper, going into Friday, the crucifixion. And so I would sit for hours in front of this, and I would just talk to him and pray to him, and let me go through this with you. I don't want you to feel alone. I love you. And not that I'm any great anything, but I wanted him to know that he wasn't alone in his suffering. And I'm not sure, that he doesn't remember it and doesn't still go through it and feel it, because humankind hasn't changed. He did what he did, and it was so huge. But so many people don't know about it and don't realize the hugeness of what happened. They think it was just, he's just a prophet. He's just a great teacher. He was this or he was that. But they don't see the hugeness of who he was and what he did. And now, because of his sacrifice, when we say we're sorry to God, the sins are gone. The mistakes are gone. He doesn't hold on to things. His brain isn't wired to remember. Ours is wired to remember. His is wired to forget. So when we say we're sorry, everything is gone. And that's because of what Jesus did,
Yeah.
I don't know if that made any sense or not.
I suspect it's something that will make more sense to me once I've had time to think about it, because we're in pretty deep topics here. I wondered whether you learned anything more about the crucifixion and the resurrection in your NDE, or was it not a topic that you particularly touched on?
Well, Jesus didn't. He's not during the NDE. After the NDE, he's appeared to me physically 5 times since the NDE. And
that's interesting.
Now, the first time he appeared to me at the age of 15 in the back of the church, and 4 other women saw him too. That was purposefully done.
Goodness.
So, and the last time he appeared to me was in my mother's kitchen. I was taking care of her. She had Alzheimer's. I was her caregiver, and I had put her to bed to take a nap, and I went into the kitchen and I was mopping the floor, and I turn around, I hear this noise, and I turn around, and he's standing there leaning up against the counter with his feet crossed. He was barefoot. He had his, I don't know, some kind of lounge pants on or something, and a shirt, and he just looked very comfortable, and he had the long hair, and I knew exactly who he was. And I turned around and I looked, and I was like, oh my gosh, don't say anything, don't move. I'm getting a piece of paper to write down what you say. And so I dropped the mop, and and he starts talking, and he said to me, he said, give it all to me. Your weariness, your doubt, your worry, your fear. Give that all to me. I'm big enough to take it. I will take it from you. You just love. That's what you're here for. And everything that has happened to you in your life has happened to prepare you for this job that I have for you. And he said to just love, to give all the rest of it to him, and he would carry it and just love. He said, that's what you do best, so just do that. I was just like, wow, is that it? Is that what I'm here for? Okay, I can do that, I think.
Do you think that he has the same message for everybody, or is that
Yes.
specific to you?
No, I think it's a universal message. I think it's for everyone. He said it to me, and I think I'm supposed to tell other people. That's what you're here for. Just love. Give all your heartache, all your worry, all the heaviness, give that to him and let him take it. That's what he does. That's what he did the day on the cross. He still does it.
Wow, I think that's probably a lovely note to end on. And unless, Rod, have you got any more questions?
I've got one more actually, which we spoke about yesterday. Abortion, and it's a bit heavy. Abortion. What does God think of abortion?
When we were talking about the baby, he breathes himself into that child. That is a child. It may be a clump of cells at the beginning, but we all evolve, we all change, we grow, and the baby does the same thing. The moment of conception is when the soul enters the body, and that child is a holy child. And God's creation, God does not kill his own creation. He does not want that to happen. And he is very specific when he said, thou shalt not kill. I don't know what part of that can be misconstrued. Abortion is killing, in a sense, killing a part of God. And why would we do that?
Yes, I agree.
I mean, there are other options. People can. I'm not downgrading people who do that. I'm not condemning anybody. I'm just saying that.
Yeah.
I know personally.
Yeah.
There are other options. Abortion does not have to come into the picture.
I agree, because not only that, you think of all the people who come with a mission. The mission literally is aborted, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. How do you know that the baby that you just aborted wasn't the person that was going to grow up to find a cure for cancer and save the world? Or how do you know that person, anything, find a cure for Alzheimer's, can, move mountains and be a great healer? Who knows? I mean,
well, that's
you're right.
That's incredible, because what you said to me, I've never said this to you, but I said that one day the person who's destined to cure cancer may have been aborted. And when people say to me, why doesn't God cure cancer? I've often said perhaps he did, but we didn't let the person live.
That's very true.
So you saying that to me was quite profound. I couldn't believe it when I heard you say it, but that's what I've been saying for a long time, and I've never said it to you, so you couldn't have heard it from me.
No, actually, no. Yesterday was the first time we talked, and we did not talk about that.
No, so that actually has verified a lot for me.
Sorry, I lost my earpiece.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I say that actually is verified. You saying that really hit home when you said that to me. It verified what I've been saying was exactly what God is saying.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, see how God talks through other people.
Yes, exactly. I couldn't believe it when you said that.
Well, you said something yesterday to me that was so profound and was so confirming for me. That was just unbelievable. And that was, and I know this is very simple and it's silly, but when Jesus appeared to me, he always appeared to me with his hair very long.
Yes.
And I came to the understanding that on the shroud, it shows his hair is short because his hair is pulled back in a ponytail. Well, he appeared to me one time with his hair pulled back in a ponytail, and it makes it look like it's short.
Yes.
Jesus didn't have short hair, he had long hair, and every time he appeared to me, it was always the same. He
Yes.
always had the long hair.
Yes.
So I asked you yesterday, what's the deal with the shroud? And you said that do they in fact put it in a ponytail?
Yes, the shroud, there's a ponytail in plaits going down the back of the shroud.
Exactly. So I've had people tell me, Jesus didn't have long hair down his back. He had short hair, like, shoulder length hair, and what you were seeing was the devil. No, I'm sorry, it wasn't the devil. The devil can't love the way Jesus does. And
if you ever go back and look at any of the rabbis, pictures of them, way back, as many as you can go, they've all got beards and long hair.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And on top of that, when St. Paul was talking about hair, if you go to the original, he was telling people not to put decorations in their hair like women. When he said, if you go back all the way back, and that's been mistranslated to saying Jesus or people should have short hair. St. Paul was saying, do not decorate your hair.
You don't put ribbons and pearls and whatever.
That's exactly what it was. He was telling people not to have decorations in their hair like women, not the other way around, to have short hair.
That sounds like you can have ribbons if you are in fact women, though.
You can, oh yeah.
I find that very reassuring. I hate to
I'm always putting bows and ribbons in my hair.
You're okay, yeah. No, he was saying to the men, don't put decorations in your hair like women.
Right.
That's what he basically was telling. So there's been a lot of mistranslation. I've gone deeply into this and what that was, and then a lot of people were saying, he was saying have short hair, and that's not what was being said. So no. You're right. You're right. You can keep your bows in, Sharon.
I need to put some bows in.
Have you seen
Jesus appeared, his hair was long and flowing and beautiful. I have never seen hair like that. I was like, really? Women would kill for that.
Some artists have done paintings of Jesus. Is there any that you've seen that you've said, oh, that's the Jesus I met?
I've seen some that come pretty close. There's a couple on my wall that the look is very close. I don't know who it was that said that Jesus didn't stand out in a crowd, because from a woman's point of view, yes, he sure did. He was a beautiful person inside and out, and the love that and the humility and the perfection. I don't even know how to explain it. He was so magnificent, and he still is. But I have not. The drawings that I've seen come close, but I wish I had a camera. I could have took a picture. I would have done anything to have my phone when I died, Okay, let's take a selfie, Jesus.
It's only a matter of time.
Yeah. Unfortunately, my phone was fried and threw across the yard. I did not have my phone with me.
if you're actually getting back to the Turin shroud, Jesus did leave a selfie.
Yes, he sure did. I was thinking about that earlier today. I was like, that is the perfect image. I mean, we know what he looks like, He did that on purpose. That was a miracle. He did that on purpose.
And you notice it specifically for this generation, because it wasn't till photography was invented that you really, really appreciated the Shroud of Turin.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I was so touched by it. It changed my life. It really did. When I realized, oh my gosh, my brothers were showing me this, and this is the real cloth, and that is the real Jesus. And he looked just like I saw him, only he had life in him. The shroud shows him in like a death mask, but you can see how tall, and what was interesting is I've always told people he was about 5'10", 5'11". The shroud says he's 5'11". It's like, okay, well, that's another confirmation right there.
Exactly.
And he weighed about 175 pounds, and that's what I kept telling people. He was slim built but powerfully built. He had muscles, and of course he needed to because of what he did for a living. But that's what the shroud showed, and it was like, that's awesome.
You said that the only thing you told us about how God looked was that he had curly hair. Can you tell us anything more about that?
God looked. There's a picture by a young girl named Akion something. I don't know what her last name is. She did a picture called The Prince of Peace.
Yes.
And that picture, I'd never seen it. I didn't know anything about her at all. But that was God, like that. God looked like that. And what was screen? And I just about flipped out. I grabbed my husband's arm, and then right in the middle of the movie theater, I said, "Oh my gosh, that's God. That's not Jesus. That's God." And I think people thought I was nuts, but
Sharon,
that's when God.
I heard you cut out. I heard you say Prince of Peace, and then the signal froze. I think we missed a bit there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me okay now?
And yes.
Okay. What happened was my husband and I went to see a movie called Heaven is for Real, and that was just a few years ago. And that picture popped up across the screen, and I just flipped out. I grabbed my husband and I said, "Gary, that's God. That's not Jesus. That's God." And that's exactly what he looked like. That picture.
Wow.
Which I had never seen before until that movie. But
I bet Akiana
know.
would like to know that.
Well, maybe she'll listen to this video.
You never know. You never know. Stranger things have happened.
We've covered a lot today. It's incredible what we've covered, because we've gone into areas that normally a lot of NDEers don't go into. So really, really do appreciate you being so open and, giving this information.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. It's been an honor. It really has. You guys are wonderful.
Oh, no, thank you so much. It's been so interesting. It really has. It's very kind of you to give us the time.
And God bless you. God bless you.